Secret contest, November, Japan, 1 Fox. November, Japan, 1 Fox.
November 2, Japan, Foxtrot.
November 2, Japan, Fox. Number 552, Multi. November, Japan, 1 Fox. 77, Whiskey Mike Alpha.
Okay, thanks. You're number 194, Alpha. N2JF. 62, South Florida.
Thank you. November, Japan, 1 Fox.
Welcome back to the Phasing Line Podcast. I'm Sterling Coffee in 0 SSC.
And I'm Marty, KC1CWF.
And this is episode 2. We just got done with Sweepstakes, as you heard. That was Marty on, what was it, K1VR?
NJ1F.
NJ1F. You worked like 2 stations, actually. Or what, 3 stations? Or 4, because you worked one on remote, at least. What'd you do?
So I started the contest on Saturday. I went over to the K1VR semi-super station to get the station ready for the owner, Fred, K1VR. He was going to operate the contest that's coming up this weekend. It'll already have happened by the time this episode is released. The CQ Worldwide CW DX contest.
Yeah, that's like, what's that, the biggest CW contest
Yeah,
of the year,
that's
I
like
would
the
say?
biggest CW contest,
It's
period.
the big one.
And Fred's going to do a single op entry. But I spent all of Saturday rebuilding the inside of the station, adding monitors, building new hutches,
Good grief.
mounting gear, and the station's actually looking terrific. But my goal was I'd have the station done by 2 p.m., and I'd get on in the contest for a couple hours and make cues.
And you made the goal?
No, I did not make the goal.
Bummer.
But
you still made cues.
I made cues. I sat down at around 4:30, so 2.5 hours late. And I put in probably 2 hours. I made like 200 cues. So I had good 100 hours.
That's a lot of cues. And so was this a remote station or was
No, I
this
was sitting in the chair.
Okay, so you were actually at the station where the antennas were.
Yeah.
Now explain your other station too. I know you were at you were using K1 Triple T.
Yeah, so then and then I got home that night and I got down on the remote to K1 Triple T.
Triple Tango.
Kilo 1 Tango Tango Tango, which if you don't know is in Peru, Massachusetts. It is actually a multi. So there's 6 radios and 8 towers if you include the 4 square on 80 meters, which is 4 towers. And there's gain on every single band. It's a great station, stacked 4-element 40s. Yagis on a 200-foot tower. It's a great station to use.
People are probably clueless at everything you're saying, but we'll put something in the show notes. Bottom line is, last episode I talked about an antenna garden, and I alluded to an antenna farm. This is like if GMOs went crazy on like cornfields, and like you have it's literally like dozens and dozens of towers with several Yagi antennas on like huge and
so
Yagis.
Typically it's around like on the high bands there's 6 Yagis on every 6 or 7 or 8 Yagis on every tower.
And these are 200-foot tall towers.
So only the 40-meter tower is 180 feet. The 20
like I said 200.
close enough.
Yeah.
And then the 20-meter tower is 140, I want to say, and the 10 15-meter tower is 120. On 10, 15, and 20, there's 5 stacks, so 5 Yagis, 4-element Yagis. Then also at 10 meters on the 40-meter tower, there's a 10-meter Yagi, 180 feet, which is amazing. It's a 5-element 10, which isn't that big, but at 200 feet, it opens the band.
Oh my gosh. Were you actually able to work? So one of the things I noticed over Sweepstakes is the high bands, 15 was marginal, but 10 meters was completely non-existent. Were you able to like actually hear people on 10 meters?
I didn't make a single cue. Oh. Not because if I turn this, one of the things to realize is even though we have a 6 stack or a 5 stack, 2 of them are fixed on Europe and 2 of them are fixed, or 1 of them is fixed south and there's 2 rotatable. So for contests like Sweepstakes, you rotate the 2 rotatables west towards the U.S., and then you can kind of sort of use the south antennas for which are typically used for a contest for like working multipliers in South America or the Caribbean for like the eastern seaboard, but you really only end up with 2 stacks. So, we were allowed, but it's not, 10 meters is great, but you're not going to find any multipliers there. I think we made 15 Qs on QSOs. We made 15 contacts on 15.
15 for 15. One QSO per meter?
Yeah, that sounds like a contest. 15 for 15. But then we made like 400 on 80, which was terrific.
480. And you were using, I assume, this Foursquare?
No. So we actually only used a dipole, but the dipole was at 150 feet.
Oh, my goodness. We use a dipole at 20 feet.
A dipole at 20 feet can smoke a dipole at 150 feet for sweeps.
It's called near vertical incident skywaves, and the idea behind that is your all the energy that you're radiating out of dipole hits the ground and gets bounced straight back up, and at the lower bands, it goes straight back down. It hits the ionosphere, and it's just like a mirror. So you get a really, really solid coverage between 0 and 400, 500 miles. So you can work all the stations. Like for me, I'm in Missouri, so I got Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, Iowa, Arkansas, Indiana, all the way out to Kentucky and Tennessee. I even worked Florida on a little bit. It wasn't quite near vertical incidents, but it's a really good band that it was really good for like getting almost the entire contiguous United States with how it worked. And I was at W0 Triple E. You were at W0 Triple T, or not W0. Kilo
K1
1 Triple T.
Operating as NJ1F.
We have a 50-foot tower with a Tenedyne T8 log periodic with some missing elements. So back when we first put this antenna up, it got really cold and we discovered it shed some elements. Like there was some pieces of the antenna have fallen off and was sticking into the roof on our Double E building at the University of Missouri at Rolla, or currently called Missouri University of Science and Technology. Like I said in the last episode, it's such a long name. Missouri S&T for short.
Triple E.
So anyway, we didn't really use that antenna because the SWR was so bad and it didn't have any directionality anymore. Normally this antenna would have like a good solid, 5, maybe, let's put it this way, like 20 dB front to back ratio. It would have like a 6 dB gain on between 13 and 30 megahertz. As a log periodic, they are wide-banded, so it could operate between 13 and 30 megahertz continuously. But when you shed some elements, you start to lose some functionality, and that was bad. So we just put up some dipoles. We put one pretty close to the ground for 80 and 40 and had 2 dipoles on that tower. And we made a clean sweep. We didn't hit as many contacts as Marty. We made 227 contacts, but we did hit every single section, all 83 of the ARRL sections in Sweepstakes, which is our like big goal. And so we're super proud of that, continuing on the legacy for another year. It's never about making the contacts. It's always about like getting as many people on the air in the college club as possible, doing mentoring and training and just, having fun. Whereas for Marty, it's all about the QSOs and the competition, right?
Yeah. So I'm just curious. Maybe you can. I don't know a lot about this. So how did it work at Triple E? Because you don't go there, but I assume you just came to kind of mentor or.
Yeah. So I did do some operating, but my main reason why I was there is to do some, I guess, on-the-job mentoring.
On the job,
like on-the-job training. We were in the school club category, and in Sweepstakes, there's a category for there's A, alpha, which is 100 watts, low power. There's B, Bravo, which is high power. There's M for multi, which is multi-operator, and I'm assuming that means high power as well. U for unlimited, what does that mean, Marty? I forget.
Unlimited is high power. It's a high power assisted. It's unlimited, so that means you can use the cluster, use a skimmer.
Okay, so assistance means you can use those cluster, skimmer. You can basically be fed information about where everybody else is operating, where people are calling CQ, so that you can go find multipliers really easily. And then there's QRP, the Quebec or Q category. And then
People who have too much patience.
I know. I worked 3 of those guys, and they were quiet, but man, I don't understand how they can deal with, like, it's a dog-eat-dog world where everybody's running a kilowatt, everybody's a Bravo station, and you have a handful of alphas who still are super loud. Just imagine cranking the power down from 100 watts to 5 watts and trying to get through these massive pileups. I don't know how it worked for them, but I mean, that's one way to have fun. QRP is really, really a lot of fun because it adds a whole new dynamic, a whole new challenge to what used to be. So what you now take for granted that you now have DXCC on 100 watts or 1,000 watts. So just another addition to the
I
challenge.
kind of look at it because, like when I'm running 1500 watts and I'd be maybe running stacked Yagis, like I often have the privilege to do from many stations.
Yeah, which is fun by itself. You don't really
Right.
get that opportunity
There's strategy.
very much.
It's how fast can I run rate instead of can I run. But I guess the thing you think about is like when I'm running a lot of power, yeah, my Yagis are pretty narrow. But if I'm running Europe and a guy down south can call me, yeah, I won't be as loud, but I'll be able to hear him. But I don't really have to worry about being loud enough down there. If I want to work a multiplier in South America, sometimes I need to turn beams, but not always. When you only have 5 watts, you got to be like really conscious of like exactly where do you have your antennas pointed. Where am I beaming? What coax am I using? Something interesting that I didn't even know until recently was I have a friend, or the station I use a lot, K1VR. We have a stack of tri-banders. So there are 8 elements on 10, 4 elements on 15, and 4 elements on 20 for the high bands, and they're on a 100-foot tower, and there's 3 of them. The top 2 are rotatable, and the bottom one is fixed. And what I didn't know is that we use a triplexer, which basically allows us to do SO2R, single op 2 radio, with using the stack of Yagis at the same time on 2 different radios. But we also have so that's a 2 network, and then there's high power bandpass filters that go with it, so we could use it on high power. But we also have low power bandpass filters that go before the amplifier. So that's the sign, we're not just going between the stack and maybe we have a radio on 20 or a radio on 40 or whatever it may be, 40 and 80, 80 and 160, 80 and 160 and 40, whatever. There's the low power filters in line. But one thing I didn't even think about is that the low power filters will eat a little bit of power, maybe a watt or 2, or 3. There's some loss. And when you're low power, say 100 watts, that's important. So a low power op friend of mine said, well, hey, look, if you're running the low power filters and the high power filters when going into the stack, you don't need the low power filters, and it's just eating power. A watt when you're running 1500 is a lot less important than a watt when you're running 5 or 100.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even though it blows my mind that you have to think about that sort of stuff, because what something you just said a minute ago is like whether or not I can run or how fast I can run was like it's like crazy to think like some people like who don't have the power, don't have the antenna like infrastructure, physically cannot like hold real estate on the spectrum because it's so hard to find it. It's so hard to like merge your little tiny QRP or even alpha 100 watt signal into the super crowded band spectrum that is contesting, Well,
I think you got to be careful there because, I think there's a lot of people who can run and are louder than they think, but they're afraid to run. They're afraid to get rate going.
Right. And it's
much more comfortable to click spots,
I mean, so what happens when we try to run? We start calling CQ, and then we get a few Qs, and then all of a sudden we'll start hearing somebody like a couple KCs above us, so it's like a real high-pitched squeal, but then it starts getting less high-pitched and less high-pitched, and eventually they're right on top of us because they're moving down from QRM, and now they're QRMing us, and eventually we just get kicked off because we're the small potatoes, and he ends up running a bunch of stations.
Issue, there's a lot of I mean, I guess this is when the balls of steel kind of thing comes in, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, you got to hold your ground.
Do you hold your ground? I'm one to hold my ground. I don't mind getting real.
Because you got a big antenna. You got a bunch of power.
If I'm using a big antenna or even a small antenna, if you stay there, they're not going to like the QRM that you're not making the U. It's who has the iron pants, who's going to sit there longer. And to be honest, it's effective. Like I say when you're talking about QRMers, intentional QRM more. Mm-hmm. Just wait it out. Don't say anything.
Yeah, never acknowledge QRM because that's QRM. What they want you to do is say, get off my frequency. You're intentionally QRMing. Get off the frequency, and they'll just that antagonizes them. If you pretend that they are not there, then they will disappear.
They are not there.
Exactly. So anyway, what was I talking about? School club.
Mini rant.
We were talking about the different categories, and W0EEE was in this school club category, which I'll re-summarize. You have alpha 100 watts, Bravo, 1,000 watts. Unlimited, which is full power, 1,000 watts, 1,500 watts actually, with the spotting network, multi-operator, QRP, and School Club. And we were S for School Club. And school clubs can have all of the above. They have the ability to run high power assisted, which is the same as unlimited category. And they also get to do multi-operator. Just because that incentivizes schools to get on the air and do what they can. It dislevels the playing field in terms of like intercollegiate competition, but it just keeps it simple for schools just to get on the air with whatever they have, just so that they can have as much fun as possible. And so in Rolla, to answer your question from I don't know, like 10 minutes ago, we what was your question?
I forget. Was it about? I don't
like
know.
How did we do it? Like what?
But my was it how much of it was, you know? So were you able to get a good run frequency going? Did you ever get?
I
runs,
remember
or
your
was
question.
It tuning guys?
So I'll answer that. But the question was like, what was I doing there? I was a mentor, right? So
right.
Well, were we able to get a run frequency? Absolutely not. I made a run of I think 10 stations before I just kind of got kicked off by a a bigger station than me. We mainly did search and pounce. So we just hunted down the band. We used the band map, the telnet, the packet cluster, to look up where the stations. We primarily just worked multipliers. I mean, here and there. We worked a lot of really big, easy stations because that's what makes it easy for inexperienced operators to make contacts. Since they're, the easy guys will be like K1VR and NJ1, what was your, whatever they were, NJ1F.
NJ1F. WW4. Anybody who's loud,
yeah,
is gonna run. The really competitive people in sweeps will always have a second radio. So a 60 hour is great on sweeps on the run radio. It's not great, but it's good because you're tuning those multipliers on the second radio. In contesting in general, I think especially in contests like sweepstakes where there's 83 multipliers, run. Even more so in CQ Worldwide, where there's hundreds. When you're the small
gun,
you run.
When you're the little pistol, it's really hard to get a frequency, and it's always a game of luck too. It is easy, but it kind of feels bad. So if I want to run and I find a frequency that just nudges right in between two big guys, I have to deal with interference on both sides, and it makes it really hard to pull out stations. We also can't run an amp. I mean, we could. But if we were to run an amp, our bark would be bigger than our bite. Our mouth would be bigger than our ears because we can only hear so well. We can send out a signal, but the noise floor at W0EE is super, super high. Like, for example, at 40 meters, the signal strength meter didn't go below S9. So if we ran an amp, we would have guys coming in at like S6, S7. We couldn't hear them because the noise from the LED lights, the solar panel inverters on the roof nearby the shack, the fluorescent lighting, the HVAC system on the roof, all that noise contributes to the noise floor. So that's what made operating a really big challenge. And that kind of challenge never really factors into the score, interestingly. So you got it easy. You got, stacked Yagis and 400 towers and, miles of cable and amplifiers just, flooding out the door. But we have, a single antenna, a FT897 without any filters, and a bunch of relatively inexperienced operators. So the playing field is definitely misleveled there, but there's still
right.
challenges in both sides.
They
so
say.
I'm not downplaying like your operation because our challenge was our own challenge, but your challenge was how fast can you rate, how fast, how many, how quick can you get a clean sweep, that sort of stuff. Whereas our challenge was
But what you're doing, don't talk about it like that. Make it. I think it's important to realize what you're doing is critically important to what I'm doing.
True.
Especially, I mean, first of all, it's important to get more people on the air, and you're doing a fantastic job of showing. I guess and correct me if I'm wrong. I know nothing about the population exactly, but I'd venture to guess that a lot of the people who you got on the air this weekend were people who might be active, but more. I assume they're probably more active on the higher bands,
like VHF
than on HF.
and repeaters and stuff. Yeah. I would say
Right.
so. Like these are guys who one of two or three of them have never made an HF contact. So what we did is I was a logger and they were the operator, and so I would take care of the logging and dealing with N1MMs like quirks and inconsistencies and dealing with that side of thing. They just had to push the button and say the words. And so there's a lot of mic freight, but they, I had to feed them like exactly what to say. The exchange was super long, so you had to give a serial number. You had to give your precedence, which was that A, B, U, M, S, power level sort of thing. You had to give your call sign. You had to give your check, which is the year you were first licensed. And in our case, it was 31. And side note, this is interesting because that stands for 1931. W0EEE officially got their call sign in 1931. And this throws a lot of people off because most people weren't born then. And most people in the contest are like, we'll say 72, 56, 07, when they got first license. When you hear somebody with 31, you're like, wait, was that actually 61, 71? Like that couldn't have been 31. And so it slows us down. And but that's still really cool. A lot of people are like, wow, you must be so old. And like, no, we're an amateur radio club at University of Missouri Rolla. And that was another thing. A lot of people ask, like, what school are you from? And we were super, super happy to give out like, we're from Missouri S&T and we're in Rolla, Missouri. And everybody was super, super happy to hear school clubs. And then the last thing in your exchange was the state or the section, which is either your state or kind of a subdivision of your state. ARRL has 83 sections in the U.S. and Canada that are kind of divided by population. For example, California has like 9 or 11 different sections. You have like East Bay, you have San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Joaquin Valley. All of these have their own section. Missouri is its own section. Kansas has its own section. You're in Eastern Mass, and you have Western Mass.
I was in Eastern Mass and Western Mass. So K1TTT is in Western Mass. K1VR, my home station where I got on for a little bit, is in Eastern Mass. It's population based,
and state, because like Wyoming doesn't have as big as a population as Missouri, but they have their own section. It's it's like, I guess, making it funner and easier to contact, because if you were to just contact all 50 states and all of the number of Canadian provinces, the number escapes me, it would be really, 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 really easy to contact California and Florida, because that's where a majority of hams are. And so it wouldn't make it a challenge anymore. You would just have California and Florida, and it would also make those guys in those states pretty bored at operating, because nobody wants to contact them and get the multiplier. They're just another 2 points instead of like 2 points plus a multiplier. So they split up the big ones into smaller ones so that they're a bit more of a challenge, right? Would you say?
Yeah, and I think this year, one of the interesting thing was, in the past, there's been a lot of, there's always those hard sections. The last ones, things that, there's always a weird Canadian or a weird California.
You have like the Yukon, the Northern Territories.
The Yukon,
these are places
VY1,
where there's probably like 5 hams in the whole place. But believe it or not.
So VY1 is actually interesting. Because the VY1 or the NT you probably worked with, I don't know, VY1JA, VY1AAA, I'm not sure which one you worked.
VY1AAA.
You worked AAA. So VY1 AAA is an operation I'm involved in. VY1 AAA is actually remote. So you worked Jerry W1VE, who was sitting in his basement in Vermont when you worked him. So VY1 AAA is, I'm actually the QSL manager for them, is at the station of VY1JA, a guy named Jay, who's fantastic. And the goal is really to keep CW and phone alive, primarily CW from the Yukon. So there's an Elecraft K3 with a remote rig box sitting up there for remotes. We'll get into remote.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before, remote ham radio. Yep.
There's a lot of ways to do it. But there's a quad for 10, 15, and 20. And then there's a V-beam for the low bands. It's some other... It's think it's about a bunch of wires, kind of coming off a central point, and they can be switched to use different elements as driven. But they're very, it's very cool. And we're so slowly building the station up there. It's a very hard place to keep up antennas.
Winter 100% of the year, and it's probably really, really windy and icy and all of that stuff.
Ice.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's hard. And so that's coming along. So VY1 AAA has really been great to a lot of people, where VY1 has been a hard malt. But some hard ones for this. My last malt was Ontario, Canada, Ontario North, ONN, which is an easy malt, but I was just looking for cluster spots for the last one, and it was spotted incorrectly. And in the remote setup I was using with at K1TTT, it's hard to tune up the bands. So that took a while to find, but then we found it.
For me, believe it or not, South Carolina was one of the later ones. It wasn't our last one, but South Carolina didn't get on till really late, and I like to finish up the contest. Like, the contest goes from 3 p.m. or this is Central Time, 3 p.m. Central Time Saturday till 9 p.m. Sunday. So it's like a 30-hour contest period, but you can only operate 24. And I like to get out of there by like 6 p.m. And they didn't come on till like pretty late, which is really surprising. The guy, like one guy from South Carolina, and there are probably more that came on later. But my very last one was the Pacific guy, the Hawaii station, and Alaska, which are not surprising, like, because think about it, they're the farthest ones away. But also South Carolina?
Kale, come on, guys. Farther. South Carolina was definitely, I've worked hundreds of them. On the East Coast, that's like, it's just as easy to work South Carolina as it is to work Italy. It's like saying, am I getting out? If you're talking, it's like saying, can I walk the block in 5 minutes? The answer is yes. And so the Pacific I got on 15, I believe. The 15 is really the band to be on.
For us, we got them on 20 late at night when they were coming into sunlight, coming into daylight. 20
right
or 15 wasn't so good for us. We could barely hear them, but they were just running such a big pileup because there was only 1 or 2 stations from the whole state. The guy...
Yeah, I think KH6LC and KH6J.
And in Alaska, there was one guy. There was two folks, and one main guy, and he kept switching his check between 58 and 59 and laughing about it. I guess he didn't know when he first got licensed, but it sounded like he was having fun. But he was working a big pileup, and I had to jury rig the amp to get it to work, to get us to make a contact. I didn't run the amp with ALC, so I don't know if it was super distorted or not, but it worked. I had to plug the foot switch in and key a switch on the amp at the same time I keyed the transceiver, and miraculously.
Did you not?
No, the back of the radio was there's a linear / CAT, a linear / computer aided tuning port on the 897, and you can use only one or the other. So the only way I could do it was to take it from the foot switch to key the amp.
Oh, I have an answer for you. On those Yaesu radios, you can get push to talk. You can get a go to ground for amp keying. You have an SB220 or whatever, so you need some sort of interface box. So because the keys on the high side.
No, this one has a built-in soft switch, so it brings it down to 0.7 volts or something. So it's nice. It's 120 volts. So if I were to plug this in without that, I would have fried everything, and it would have been the worst. But I got lucky. Ward Silver is to blame for fixing our amp.
But you
luckily.
But you can get out of the 897s. This is kind of a tangent.
Isn't everything though?
Out of the 897, isn't everything? Out of the 897s, tuner port you can get.
Yeah, that's what we were using.
For transmit.
But the tuner port was going into the tuner. And the tuner had an outlet for CAT. Like the CAT control was, it does. You're right. It does have ground. So maybe I could have done something different, but it was in pressured, and the only way I could see it is using the foot switch and using that to key the amp. But I didn't have ALC. So I had to, every time I turned the amp on to active mode, like to basically turn the amp on, not exactly on, but it was an active rather than bypass. It keyed the radio, so I had to key down I made a video of it on Twitter that'll explain it a lot better, but bottom line is we had to turn the amp on at the very end to get Alaska and Hawaii. And
I'll be honest, I never use ALC
oh no,
on amps.
what does that do? What is, like, I was actually like kind of curious. You have ALC on a radio, which brings down the level of your input so that you don't distort, right? So that
right. So it brings down the
gain
input to the yeah. It brings down the input of the radio, so you're not distorting.
And this is an output
really
from
necessary.
the radio into the amplifier.
Right. It basically sends a voltage back
of the
to
ALC on the radio. And then this is something like, I'm an extra class hand, but I don't know everything. Like, I don't know exactly what.
The reason I don't know a ton about it is because I don't use it. It's not
like necessary. I said, it worked fine. I even checked the output on an oscilloscope, and it looked pretty all right. I just don't know the edge case where, if not using the ALC, like, what's that for? And I'm hoping, and this is why we have open lines of communication here at the Phasing Line, I'm hoping that somebody will email or contact us and let us know what ALC is for on amplifiers, specifically SB220.
I know pretty well what it's for. I understand.
Or how to use it, or why we should use it.
I understand.
Or what Marty is doing wrong by not using, or myself.
Right. Yeah, tell me what I'm not doing wrong, and I'll send you a T-shirt.
Did you send everybody a T-shirt last time? Where's mine?
I put everybody into the Twitter who.
Yeah, and I'm so happy.
Into a raffle.
This podcast was a hit. Like, we got 2,000 downloads in this past week, and I'm really super excited for the future of it. I got a lot of Reddit comments and Twitter and Facebook comments that people were really enjoying the topics, the flow, the conversational style, the light humor, all that sort of stuff, and that there's nothing like it.
So let us know what we're doing wrong.
We did get feedback. I know Marty and I like to interrupt each other a lot, and people don't seem to like that. But that was it.
We have good. We do good at not cutting ourselves off in like a bad way. I think it's the way of showing that
our minds go faster than our mouths do. So I know I can talk a million miles a second, and Marty, his mouth can't move as fast as his brain wants him to, and I'm the same way. But that's what, we want to show our passion and our, like, excitement for the hobby and for the podcast. So just let us know if we need to slow down, and I will. Yeah,
and I think getting user feedback. We don't do this to listen to our own voices. We do this to kind of spread our message, spread what we care about, and talk to. We like to have a two-way dialogue. This is a broadcast. I'm talking into a microphone, which is going into software, which is being recorded, and then you're listening to this, be it in your car, be it mowing your lawn, be it hopefully fixing your antennas for the winter. Maybe that's another thing. On Twitter or on Reddit or via email, wherever you want to talk to us, tell me where you listen.
That would be cool.
I'm really intrigued to know.
I would listen to it on my commute and basically every other time. I love to listen to podcasts when I'm driving or when I'm at work doing menial tasks, where I'm just kind of like brainlessly typing into Excel or, not doing anything that requires an excessive amount of thought, cleaning, doing laundry, doing the dishes, that sort of stuff, that I can just zone out and listen to, Jeremy KF7IJZ and George Zafiropoulos. Sorry, George, I really messed up your last name. On the Workbench podcast on Ham Radio 360, or Kale on the Ham Radio 360, or the QSO Today podcast, or ICQ podcast. There's so many out there, and we hope to be a solid part of the Ham Radio podcast, I guess, universe, but bring a youth perspective into it. That's what we're here for.
So I think what we're going to do now is. So far, we've kind of discussed the intro of Sweeps, and we're going to come back more with some war stories and other tidbits. But right now, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back here in a minute on the Phasing Line Podcast. Welcome back to the Phasing Line Podcast. I guess you could call this part 2.
Again, saving the world with ham radio. But this time we're not going to go into income. We're going to continue the discussion on sweepstakes and kind of talk about the collegiate side of things, the school club side of things in the sweepstakes, as well as the collegiate initiative that ARRL is talking about. So that's what's up.
So I think first, I think before we kind of get into the ARRL initiative for doing amazing things, which they are, they're doing fantastic things. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But first, I think we should kind of talk about. So how did you mentor? So you just kind of said to me, and I'll say it back to the world. You were there as a mentor. You're 24. You know, they let you out a while ago. I don't know why they let you out.
I got out.
You weren't ready to be graduated.
That's actually whatever. A Georgia Tech saying, "I got out."
Got
and
out.
if my fiance listens to this, she'll appreciate it. But no, yeah, I got out, and I'm an alumni now. But in the rules, it actually says alumni are invited or allowed to participate and operate on the air, but it is encouraged that they don't hog the station. And I tried to do nothing of the sort. I think I did make most of the contacts, which, you know, is fine, since, you know, I wanted to make the clean sweep and it keeps spirits up and everything, because that's super exciting to make a clean sweep. I mean, if you looked at social media, I was constantly posting like, we're almost there.
When I got my sweep and I posted my broom picture, you know.
Yeah, and I almost broke the bell. We have a bell every time you make a multiplier. Every time you get a new station or a new section, you hit the mult bell, which is just like a ring bell for like ring for attention.
Ring for
service. Yeah, ring for service bell. And you hit that every time you get a multiplier, and it's just kind of fun. And so when I hit the final multiplier, I just kept pounding it. Ding, 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 ding. We did it.
I've had experiences where, like, I'm at multis and every station is a ring a mult bell. You're trying to pull out like a weak guy, and you're listening with your headphones really closely. You've like all the IF shifted over and all these noise blinkers, and you almost get the last letter of his call and bing, 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 bing.
I bet that's frustrating.
QRZ.
So I was there for mentoring and kind of seeing the state of things, because they're undergoing some changes. They're getting a new tower hopefully soon, and they're also getting a new repeater. They are moving a lot of junk around the station, the ham shack, which is pretty big in terms of ham radio stations at colleges. They have like, I would say it's almost 200 square feet.
Isn't that FT897 you used your radio?
No, it's their radio. I just borrowed it for a long time. I think one of the guys there forgot that I borrowed it, and he was surprised that they even had one. But yeah, no, it was my radio. It was my personal radio for a while, but it was actually their radio that I borrowed.
But was it your FT1000 their personal radio?
No.
So?
No, it was never mine. I never donated it. We got it donated by a guy in I think Cuba, Missouri, who also donated us an FT1000 MP Mark V field.
Which you blew up?
That I blew up. I mean, I plugged it into the amplifier and a dummy load, and I didn't plug in the dummy load all the way. Like the PL259 was cross-threaded, so the SWR was super high, and it got just eradicated the RF section on the transmit relay, as well as the RF receive section for some reason. The fix is, it's possible to fix, no problem there. Like, I found out all the problems, but the main problem I had with that is that all the parts are now in a puzzle. The pieces that I took apart, like I took apart wires, I threw screws out, like I took all the components, the fan, the heat sinks, the cable harnesses, just plugged them out at free will, and they're all still in the box. They're just unconnected. And now it's a giant puzzle to figure out what wire.
It's going to take you hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, so we might just send it back to Yaesu or a Yaesu servicer. It'd probably be like $300 to get it fixed, which isn't bad for a $5,000 radio at the time. I think it was for $5,000, and now it's on the market for maybe $3,000, $1,000. I don't know. It's a top end. How much?
$1,000.
Yeah, it's a top end contest rig.
It was
for the 90s, and it's still a very reputable radio.
WRTC 2000, that was the gold standard.
Yeah, and now you have SDRs, but still, this was a radio that has like some really, really great specifications as radios go.
A lot of guys still use them because, you know, you can get them, especially, you don't think about it, but even if you have 2 radios, SO2R, but if you have a multi-multi and you have, say, 6 or 12 radios, if you need an amplifier and a radio for each station and you have 6 stations, you know, if a radio is $5,000 and an amp is $2,000, that's 7 times 6. That's a lot of money. So, you know, if you're spending that much money, you know, you're not spending, you know, the cost of one radio. You're spending the better part of like $50,000 on amps and radios. Or you could buy like a used radio and a used amp, maybe spend $2,000 a station, and then you're only spending $12,000 instead of $50,000. That's $40,000 that A, you may not have, or B, now you can put in bigger antennas.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you can have really dang fancy radios, but dummy loads are bad antennas.
Indeed.
Dummy loads are bad antennas.
So are spaghetti and wet noodles and anything non-conductive, you know.
You'll hear me this weekend in the contest. I'm going to be away on vacation, but I'm going to the ocean. And
you're going to the ocean to contest?
I'm going to the ocean, unrelated from the contest, but I'm actually going to go and strap a 40-meter vertical dipole to a pile in the ocean and drop the ground side into the salt water. And that antenna has just worked phenomenally for me. Phenomenally.
Where it actually at? Like, you're not in the middle of the ocean. You're
right on the shore. There's like a dock.
Florida or
Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Oh, okay.
And what I typically do is I feed it with 450 ohm ladder line.
Mm-hmm.
Open
wire.
Slotted twin lead is the technical term.
Yeah. The ocean is like the ocean is a super ground plane because it's very highly conductive, and you said you use a balanced tuner.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a great antenna. If you have an access to an ocean, use it.
It's the people who put up dipoles at the ocean. It's like saying I'm gonna put up a 300-foot tower and then hang wires at 30 feet off of it. It's like, give me a break.
VK3YE on YouTube. He's in Australia and he lives on the coast, and he does a lot of cool experiments with water. Not water antennas, but putting half your antenna in the ocean because it's so conductive. It acts like a really solid ground plane. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm in the middle of the nation and I don't get that luxury, but if you do, you should try it.
So what I do is I don't actually put in any ground radials. I put in one wire that goes completely into the water. You
know what saltwater I have? Saltwater antenna I have. I actually built one a few days ago. It's really effective.
A dummy load?
Indeed, it is a saltwater dummy load, and I'll put the show notes.
I've used an N0 SSC dummy load before.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I wouldn't put my name on it. I
used one of your Skippy peanut butter dummy loads.
I found this idea on the internet somewhere, but basically it's a peanut butter jar full of water and a little pinch of salt. You dissolve the salt in the water.
Bit of salt.
Yeah, you dissolve the salt in the water, and on the cap of the peanut butter jar, you put a SO239 female UHF connector and 2 wires, one connected to the center pin, one connected to the shield of the SO239. You bend the wires out to act like they're like parallel down into the base, down into the bottom of the peanut butter jar, and just barely touch the bottom. And they ride the edges of the wall, and you probably don't have to have them like exactly like following the edge of the wall of the peanut butter jar, but it acts like a 50 ohm resistor, and it's super effective. It's like a 50 ohm load all the way between 0 and almost like 2 meters. Like I've used it on 2 meters pretty frequently, and it starts to get like, if you have it next to some metal or something, it'll be wonky, but at 6 meters and below, it's like perfectly fine. It's literally 5 cents of stuff plus a connector.
You can't use it. You can't use it like, say, outside for like a dummy load for like a Foursquare or something, because when it freezes.
Yeah, when it freezes, it'll change the impedance a little bit.
A little bit.
I've actually contacted somebody using the dummy load. I was just saying N0 SSC testing 1 2 3 1 2 3, and then this guy like full signal 5.9 came back saying like N0 SSC I hear testing sounds really good. What you running there? And I was just kind of blown away, and he thought I was being sarcastic, but I said, I'm running a 100 watts into a saltwater dummy load, peanut butter jar full of water and with salt in it, he's like, haha, that's funny. You must be running a tri-bander. I'm like, no, really. And I sent him a picture, and we go back and forth still today. And it was so funny because he thought I was kidding. But no, I actually caught it. And he was in Indiana on 40 meters. And this, it's a peanut butter jar. And just imagine, like, it's not an antenna. It's literally a peanut butter jar that I'd worked this guy on. So, and most of the time, if I switch to it, if, say, I'm actually on an antenna, then I switch peanut butter jar, and you can't really hear me, and you can't really hear signals. But there are some times where propagation is just maniacal, like it's crazy good, I don't think it's propagation being maniacal. I think it's your feed line. Yeah, maybe my feed line was acting like an antenna. You're not wrong there. But I mean, the SWR is 1-to-1, so and I wasn't getting shocked by RF.
If it has perfect SWR, it must be a fantastic antenna.
Right. A resistor is a perfect antenna.
Right. 50 ohms doesn't spell perfection.
That is true.
So I guess you're at N0, you're at W0EE. So how did the mentoring work, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So was it like one-on-one? I know you said you logged.
Yes, there was a lot of one-on-one. So I would operate for a while, and I would have an inexperienced young Padawan doing the logging.
A youngin.
Yeah. And then we would switch roles. There's a lot of mic fright. When you're new, it's easier to log because you don't have to actually talk to anybody and worry about messing up. Even though messing up on the log is much worse in terms of your score. Even for us
experienced operators, Sweepstakes is not an easy exchange contest.
Right, it's a very long exchange, and so I would demonstrate by operating, and then after maybe a couple dozen contacts, I would switch over, and I'd have them go through the band and find the easy ones, like the stations that are in the packet cluster that are calling CQ and not getting a huge number of contacts. And they would say the call sign just once, and I would prep them. I had a little sheet showing the number, precedence, W0EE, check, section, and I showed like number sign, S, W0EE, 31, Missouri. So they just have to read off that, and all I would have to do is they wouldn't have to worry about logging it. I would put in the number, the check, section, and precedence, and that would be it. And that would just get them on the air. And after a few contacts, after kind of struggling through the first one, because, the first one, it's always like, you might have, I need your check and section. And they're like, what's that? What's my what? And so I'm like, okay, 31, Missouri. And they would be like, 31, Missouri. What's your check and section again? And I'd be 31. Yelling at them, say it louder, say it, 31, Missouri. And I mean, you make the contact, and that was like, it's really stressful, but when you're done and it was successful, it's super exhilarating. And so they go on to the second, and then the third, and the fourth,
and then the fourth, and the fifth, and then they're like, it's 3 hours later, I missed my final, but I'm doing radio.
Yes, and that's when the bug hits, and that's what I try to do. And so I kind of challenge other colleges out there. If you're an experienced operator, and you're an alumni, or you're just fresh out of college, or you're, maybe you're an experienced operator and you're at a college and you have a college club, you have something to help. Like if there's a HF station, you got to do Sweepstakes. Sweepstakes is like the collegiate competition. It's one of the only ones with a school category that isn't the school club roundup, which is like the week-long. It's sort
Not
of a
really
contest, but it's sort of like
right.
Mostly just an opportunity for younger people in schools to get on the air. Whereas the collegiate or the Sweepstakes is a contest with a school club category,
right?
With kind of a subcategory.
It's not a contest within a contest.
Yeah.
It's more of a contest.
And it used
category.
to be they had the intercollegiate competition, which would use Sweepstakes, CW, and single sideband versions as a grounds for competition between colleges, like NCAA style rivalries, that sort of stuff would go on. And so I'm really trying to revive that. And, we need your help as college operators and alumni to help get more colleges on the air and help mentor HF operation, because it's not simple. There's a lot, to learn. And, you have to tune the antenna. You have to put up an antenna. You have to have it tuned. You have to have an amp. You don't always have to have an amp, but if you do, you have to know how to use it. The logging system, there are hundreds of hotkeys and hundreds of different things. Rig control, the telnet, different statistics, and the even I just learned last week.
And also even like things that you and I are still learning.
Yeah.
what weird openings happen on what bands at what times.
Like people think that you can get on 10 meters and you can go anywhere in the world, but that's simply not true.
Right. Like for example, in New England on CW, I can often work JA at 4 p.m. in the afternoon on 40 meters.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know about it. Like at 9 a.m. on 40 meters, I can almost always work VKs easily.
Yeah, and it's not a very intuitive. I mean, once you get into it, it starts to get more intuitive, but it's not common sense. Like you can't immediately associate this frequency with this place at this time. It's all dynamic. All depends on a lot of different things, and that's just a learned experience. And that's what you, as a college or a young person with some experience, needs to help give to those who want to learn.
That's the difference between being good and great. It's things like I know like a lot of inexperienced ops, and especially people with small antennas, often say, on 80, 160, and 40, you're never going to work DX. One of the best DX bands is 40 meters.
Yes, absolutely. You can work so much on 40, but you just need to know when to do it and what solar.
40 is almost always open somewhere.
Yeah. If it's not open to domestic, open to the whole country, like if you're me, I can contact anywhere between California and in Maine and Florida on 40 meters almost mostly at night, but even during the day I can still contact a huge amount of the contiguous United States. But at night it opens up to the whole world, and I was hearing it was South Africa, I heard Zambia, I heard several stations in South Africa, just tons of DX, and I wasn't working DX, so if I wanted to I could have.
Even at 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I can often hear Europe on 40 meters. Yeah. Same with 80, obviously later at the night. But I work lots of DX on 80. It sounds just like they're coming in on 20. I have big antennas. I don't have big antennas. Like on 80, my antenna is a vertical. It's just a wire shot over a tree with 30 radials underneath.
Yeah,
it's not a very complex antenna. It's not a big looking antenna, but it's an effective antenna.
See, one of the things I'm trying to think about is trying to reduce the complexity of stations and how because at W0EEE they have a radio with 100 menus, 100 buttons. They have a manual antenna tuner which has 2 knobs, 2 capacitor, an input-output capacitor, and a inductor. They have a remote antenna switch. They have, we had 4 different antennas going on. We had an amp. We had computers. We had, everything going on. And it's super complex for somebody to just walk in and operate. So I want to try to break that barrier to bring ham radio closer to inexperienced operators to make it easier for them to just get on the air. So anyway, I'm alluding to something that the ARRL is doing, and I'm a part of it. I'm proud to be a part of the ARRL Collegiate Initiative, the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative.
Collegiate Initiative.
Yeah, they don't have a big catchy catchphrase as great as Marty's, but the ARRL Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, I started calling it CARI, C-A-R-I, but I don't know if they officially accept that or anything. They're going to do a lot to support colleges to get on the air because all aspects of college, especially like engineering and the STEAM, STEAM. Now it used to be STEM, but now it's STEAM.
I can't stand it.
What, do you not the A?
Yeah, there's no reason for it.
So I thought about this, and
so first we should say what it is.
The science, technology, math, arts, and engineering. I said that wrong. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So
it's saying everything in life, minus knowing how to write papers, and grouping in a subcategory. But if you're gonna do STEAM, you might as well do STEAM, STEAWM, add writing, humanities.
That's the same.
Are you just trying to make it? It's like when you make an acronym so vague, it lacks meaning.
Yeah, and that's the same thought I had, but once I thought about it, once I started reading some articles about why they added the A, the arts, to the thing where you wouldn't think there was so much art, I thought art was like building clay pots, photography and painting and, that sort of artistry. But there's actually a lot of creative industrial design in products every day. Like the iPhone was engineered by an artist, the art and science of amateur radio. If you think about it from that perspective.
Advanced radio art.
Yeah, if you think about it from that perspective, it really makes sense to add art as a art and design and creative engineering into this field, because if we're not creative in what we do, and we're not artistic in terms of being like unique and creative and having like crazy cool ideas that nobody else has done, then we're pretty much robots, I guess. Which, you know, I mean, we go enough into the future, we'll have creative robots, but that's, you know, neither here nor there. But that's why they added the A, because there's design, there's art, there's an esoteric aesthetic to all of the things that are engineering and mathematics and science, and that's just a whole like kind of subcategory part of stuff. So I don't know. That was a big tangent, but that's just something I was like, you know, why is there now art in my engineering field? I don't want no dang artist, but in reality, it's all.
I mean, I guess there's some logic there. You know, I'm not a big like artist person, but like not a studio artist, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, and that's what we thought.
As
that's
you said,
what I thought it was
enhancing radio art. I think there's a lot of ways to view it. I'm intrigued to see if it lasts. I'm intrigued to see if it sticks, and I'm intrigued to see what it turns into. And I guess we're just going to kind of see that over time. But I think we should kind of get back. Let's take a step back. Back to the collegiate.
Yeah, no, that
Carry.
was. Yeah, so STEAM. We'll call it STEAM for now. It used to be STEM, but now it's STEAM. Cool. But Carry is an initiative by the ARRL and by colleges at large. I think it was started by a couple Ivy League colleges. Initially, ARRL called it the Ivy plus amateur radio thing, and a lot of people got mad at that because it was kind of exclusive, even though the CEO is like, oh, we're including other colleges, but it's the Ivy and amateur radio. So now it's the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative. And so what the ARRL is doing, supporting colleges to get on the air, do this contesting stuff, and basically focus a bunch of ideas into one spot. Right now, it's a Facebook group. If you look up Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, or ARRL, Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative, I think there's 250, 270 people on there that are mostly collegiate amateur radio operators or alumni.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's really great. And so right now, it's just kind of a think tank, a brainstorming session of, you know, what can we do? And a couple, today actually, I commented like, hey, we need an Echolink conference. We need some D-Star reflectors. We need some HF nets for colleges. And we need to start up
we need places we can hang out.
Yeah, we need to start up some more contests for colleges and schools and for young people too. So that's what they're doing, and that's pretty cool, and I'm glad to be a part. I'm an alumni. I'm officially an old man with a job, but I'm still really invested into my college, my alma mater. I'm from Missouri, so I don't know how to pronounce anything. And as well as Youth and Ham Radio, and that's really cool that I get to kind of get both things. Alma mater. Look at Marty from Minnesota. No,
Minnesota.
Massachusetts. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the Youth of Massachusetts. I don't know. Yeah, I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I agree with you. The Ivy thing had to go. Mm-hmm. And I think this is going to really push the program forward. Yeah, because now we got everybody from from the Ivy League colleges are all on board with it. Harvard, WNYU, got Stanford, got Yale, and then also got Missouri SNT and Virginia Tech, MIT, Georgia Tech. What is the MIT W1XM and W1MX or whatever?
Yep. Their VHF and HF like contest calls, or I forget how it is, but
W1MX and W1XM.
Yep. And you got the Aggies, you got Fayetteville, you got University of Arkansas, you got University of Oklahoma,
K1CC.
There are a lot of college amateur radio clubs.
I think more than ever, really. Yeah, and they're active, and they have stations.
And they're starting to come out of the woodwork, but then we're also getting a lot of interest from community colleges and not so big colleges. Like Missouri S&T is not a big college. They have a total enrollment of I think 10,000. I think it was 7,000 when I graduated, compared to like 40,000 at Mizzou. But Mizzou has a ham radio club. Missouri University. Even Missouri State University is starting to get a ham radio club. So not only is it kind of bolstering what is already there, it's also already getting a ton more interest from colleges that don't even have clubs or stations or anything. So hopefully, we'll be able to provide the resource to them, as well as, make more colleges that are already there more active and have more opportunity to be active and to, share thoughts with people of their own mind. So we started on Facebook. We also have a GroupMe chat. And that's available on the Facebook. I don't know the thing, but just look up Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative on Facebook, and there you go. I'll push that in the show notes as well as the group.
I think that's something we will kind of check back on periodically and see where it goes. Well, I think we've put together a great show this week. There's lots of cool content here. There's some things that I think we talked about getting to, but I don't think we're going to get to this week. And we'll talk about it in the future. We really don't want to make these too long.
We've been going on for, I don't know, what was it, an hour and 20 minutes? So we're going to cut this down.
We'll cut this down to right around an hour.
Yep. Hopefully we won't bore you guys with all of our sweepstakes jargon and Foursquare, this and that. But also, hopefully that's like really interesting. This is really dynamic too. Like, I really like kind of the way this is going because we're talking about all this cool, like, contesting stuff. At the same time, I get my little bit of collegiate, youth, amateur radio, that sort of stuff. Which, oh, by the way, YOTA, Youngsters on the Air, they're having their December Youth Month. And they also have youth nets as well. They're located in Europe, though, so it's kind of hard to make nets work internationally because HF is hard. And I was trying to think about, so what do they do in December Youth Month? They have each member society of the IRAU Region 1, which is each country, basically, gets a designated call sign with YOTA in the suffix, which is already a problem for the U.S. because we can't have more than 3 characters in the suffix of our call, so we need to do something different. And they get on the air for a week, month-long QSO party, and whoever makes the most contacts wins. It's kind of like School Club Roundup, except each country has a call sign, and each young person in that country can use that call sign. I think they do it from centralized stations, but they can also use the call sign at other stations around their country. So I'm trying to think of ways to adapt this to the U.S. as well as the YOTA camp too. And this is all like, a big thing going on.
It's in very much planning stages.
Yep, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Check them out at ham-yota.org.
So, as we mentioned, I think you might have seen it in our show notes last week. We kind of briefly mentioned the idea that throughout the show, we really, as of right now, we don't have sponsors, and that's not somewhere we see ourselves going in the near future. But there are expenses.
Right. This podcast is not free, and I mean, I do have a job, but I also have bunches of money in student debt, and Marty doesn't have a job. Clearly, I do have a job. Years old.
I have a job.
Oh wait, what?
I have a job.
Oh my gosh! Look at Marty. He has a job and he's paying for the podcast.
But I have to. I owe people money and I have to pay off a computer.
Yeah.
Life isn't free. And I guess what we're trying to say here is we're not looking to get rich. He has a day job. I'm in school.
I have a fiance and a wedding to do.
Yeah, but we would like to break even and a little bit of money. Don't think we're gonna live off of this. We're maybe after a couple of years we can buy a field recorder and go record interviews and do more cool stuff. And there's gonna be some awesome interviews coming up in the future.
Yeah, we've got one set up for probably the next episode. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that soon. But I think I'm not sure how many people here are very podcast savvy. But in the podcasting world, a way people often try and ask for financial contributions is through something called Patreon.
Patreon is a way for you to contribute. I think they have really simple ways. Like you can contribute $1, or you can contribute $1 a month, or something like that. You can contribute even more.
It's repeated donation.
It's sort of like PayPal. I mean, it goes through we set up a PayPal for the podcast. And yeah, no, basically all we're saying is we have a Patreon. It's there. And if you think this podcast is valuable to you,
help us create this.
Please
make it better.
Feel free. Yeah, please feel free to show us your appreciation in terms of monetary contribution so that, we don't have to live
in debt
eating ramen.
But I think before, we'll tell you how to get there in a second. But I think, so basically, just to give you an idea, Patreon is basically a site where you say, okay, I will give Marty and Sterling $12 a year, $1 a month. I will give them $2 a month. I will give them $3 a month. And although $1 or $2 does not sound a lot, if we can get, a few people giving us a couple dollars, that'll really help. Because right now we're losing money. Yeah. We're not looking to get rich. We're just looking to finance.
In total, we have the hosting, which is $12 a year. We have Libsyn, which is $5
But
a
it's
month.
and that's gonna go up to closer.
That's gonna have to go up.
That's gonna become $20.
That only
a month.
gives us 50 megabytes a month, which is only like one episode. And we've got email. We have email forwarding and Google Suites.
We're gonna have
Google Drive,
website
storage, and that
hosting.
sort of stuff. And it totals about $50 a month, which isn't a lot for me. I can totally do this, but it'd be great. If I didn't
you're
have
losing
to.
money on this, and you have things to pay, and that doesn't even
you're not
include
wrong.
things like we have to have microphones. We're trying to improve the audio. We know it doesn't sound great, or it's getting better.
Which, by the way, we never talked about. You got a PR40, and I got a pop filter. See, pop is gone.
We're working on our
And you got a
audio. I have
PR40.
a mic processor that might show up eventually, but I like this microphone.
Yeah.
It's not. Tell
And
me how it
you all might
sounds.
notice I'm really echoey than he is. That's because my apartment is made of concrete, wood, and no soft materials except for my cat. So I need to buy some like sound deadening foam or something, and I'm not about to go pay for that out of my
Maybe if
pocket.
we have Patreon, that can happen in the future. So if you think this is content that you want to hear more of, and you really don't want us to be going on living off of ramen, I'd encourage you to go to patreon.com/phasinglinepodcast. One word. patreon.com/phasinglinepodcast. Maybe you can only afford to give $1, maybe 50 cents a month.
Yeah, or none at all.
None at
Like,
all.
I mean,
if you think this is worth it
that's
to you,
fine
but you
too.
don't have money to donate, that's totally cool.
If you don't want to, if you don't feel like you have the ability or want to donate, just still tweet at us. Like tweet us that you appreciate it or you hate it and you want something to change. Anything, all contributions, whether
and we're making it
Patreon
clear.
or Twitter or anything.
We'll listen to you if you give us money. We'll listen to you if you're not. There may be some easier routes to get to us, but we're very accessible. We're not behind any glass walls. We're always willing to talk.
Yep.
But don't think that this is pay to play. Don't think that we need every single person to donate $1,000. But we don't want to lose money. I hope you don't think we should have to lose money. And we hope that you enjoy what we do. And at the same time, tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like at us. Tweet at us. Reddit at us. Email us.
Sterling at phasinglinepodcast.com and Marty at phasinglinepodcast.com. We might also add like a basic contact at phasingline.com, but that would require me to spend I think $5 more a month to get that email. So all of these things are kind of hurt. I wouldn't say they hurt, but it's just like
they add up. They add up really quickly.
It all adds up.
$55 a month.
I feel like we're providing enough value for you that you can provide some value for us. This is what's called the value for value model, as opposed to the sponsor model that other podcasts like Ham Radio 360 has a great sponsorship from MTC Radio, 100 Watts and Wire with ICOM, DX Engineering, Ham Nation with ICOM, that sort of stuff.
I mean, and it's not something. It's not. We're not saying we're not going to ever consider doing that in the future. It's definitely something we'll think about when the time comes.
Yeah.
But we do a conversational show, and we really want to, because we talk so much from our opinions, we think it's important to kind of keep it our opinions. But we'll reevaluate as we go in the future. But we're hoping this crowdfunding model works. I hope we provide value. I hope we provide an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a month of programming that you enjoy. And maybe you can help us keep doing this.
Yep. And we will give you stuff too. There's some hats, shirts, that sort of stuff, as well as mentions on the podcast. We'll probably do something like thank you to Bob and Tim and Eric and John and Mary and Chris and everybody who donated us this month. And to recognize everybody who appreciates. And we'll start doing stuff that you guys are tweeting at us as well, like some suggestions. I know one guy wants to do a CQ or CW challenge where we send a CW thing and we try to guess what it is. We both suck at CW. I think you're better at it than I am. But that would be pretty fun. And those kinds of suggestions are super, super helpful, and that's where we want to take it.
That's kind of our bread and butter, but thank you so much for listening. If you listened to this to the end, you made it all the way here. You're very brave.
Sorry for that gigantically long solicitation, but we just want to put it out there.
Gotta do it. Gotta do it. Well,
we won't do it. Well, we'll do it less next time.
Yeah, we just have to get the ideas out on the table. Thanks so much for joining us. If this is your first time Thank you for enjoying the first episode. If this is not your first time, thank you for returning. If you want more information, website is phasinglinepodcast.com. Phasinglinepodcast.com. All one word. We're on Twitter at phasingline. Where else are we?
And we're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We're on the
anything that'll
Pocket
capture
Cast,
an RSS.
We're on Overcast. We're on iHeartRadio. We're
Facebook,
on Libsyn,
YouTube,
and YouTube. We're on the N0SSC YouTube. I don't have a YouTube for Phasing Line right now.
Where else should we be? Let us know. Tell us.
I don't know if we can be anywhere. We can start a Yahoo group. I think that will get some more of the demographic in the ham radio world.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let us know. And we look forward to talking to you here next time in 2 weeks on the Phasing Line. Bye-bye for now.